Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Lynn, and welcome to Murder Maven's true crime podcast. And I thought that I would just go ahead and do today's day five Karen Reed retrial recap live. So Wendy and I just finished the Killer Cards episode 4, where we chatted about Alex Murdoch. So if you missed that episode, it's available for replay. So you can go ahead and catch that episode on replay if you would like. And separately, I have also been following the Karen Reed trial, which was our Killer Cards episode 3. Hey, Susan. Welcome, friend. How are you? Quite a little bit of an impromptu live stream, so thanks for finding me, Susan. Um, so, Karen Reed, Susan, have you been watching the trial? Just let me know. But today was day 5, and it was a half day. And so it was a half day for the jury, but for, the lawyers and the judge, they did go, like, a full day, and it was really I have mixed thoughts about, how today went. So, let me start off. Oh, Susan says, "No, I'm still watching the Maya trial." Oh my gosh, that's a long one, girl. Um, but let me tell you how today went. This was a very curious choice to me. So I'm really fascinated about what legal strategy and thought went into this. But the witness who was called today was Ian Whiffen. Ian Whiffen is a digital forensic examiner. And essentially, he was called by the prosecution to talk about the cell phone data. And I had made a comment earlier on Killer Cards that cell phone data really it's coming into play quite a lot in a lot of these criminal trials because your cell phones are so prevalent now. Everybody has them, and now they are so sophisticated. Cell phones have so much data that can be gleaned off of them, like geo-positioning data and, who you're contacting and when, what you're Google searching, and all this and that. And so they brought Ian Whiffen on to talk about his expertise in analyzing cell phone data. He's the person that when you can't quite figure something out, it gets escalated to him. So he's kind of not like the frontline analyst, but I think he's more the, hey, this is a head scratcher, and you call this guy in. That was the sense that I got. Hey Ray, welcome. And so I'm late and I need to be in bed. Oh. Well, yeah, it's past my dinner time, but I figured I'd pop on and do a quick little day 5 recap. So I figured I'd do it live since I'm here. And yes, Big Brother AI is always watching. Okay, so this is very true because basically, your cell phone is keeping track of like everything that you're doing, right? And so that's why it's become such a core part of a lot of these trials these days. And here's the thing, this guy's testimony in Whiffen, he it makes sense if you have seen the first trial and you kind of know why he's important as a witness. Because he gets up and he's talking about essentially the how a phone works, how it's logged, because on the back end of everything happening, your phone is like logging things and keeping track of things, and it's making records into databases and whatnot. And when something happens and your cell phone data is extracted, there are special tools that help to look at all of that internal information that your phone is keeping track of. And by the way, your phone's keeping track of a lot of things. FYI, if you didn't already know that. But the he was talking about a core fact that was under a lot of debate and contention from the first trial. But what's odd is that fact hasn't arrived yet. It hasn't been like put out in testimony yet. I mean, in loose part, but not by the person who I feel is at the center of it all. And what I'm talking about is um the whole how long to die in cold. That's the Google search that Jen McCabe did from her phone. Now here's the heated debate. When you look at the cell phone data logs, it says that that Google search was conducted at 2:20 some odd AM, 2 AM, around 2:30 AM. However, John's body was not found until, like, after 6 AM or something like that. Jen McCabe, whose phone was used for the search and who herself admits to actually putting that search in, she said that the reason why she searched for that is because Karen Reed told her to after they discovered the body. And so, thanks, Ray, for liking and subscribing. Appreciate you. Yeah, Streamlabs is kind of it's putting in the reminders for me. Thanks. So oh, Ray, I just saw this. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. I need to do this. I have an Android, so I'm gonna look that up. Or you can let me know in the chat how I can look for that setting. But that's the hot thing that's under contention, right? But Jen McCabe hasn't even been put on the stand yet to talk about this Google search that she did. So it's weird that they're calling the expert ahead of her to explain how cell phone data works. I feel like, to be honest, it was very dry testimony. And I kind of feel like it was a little bit boring. It kind of lost me a little bit. Granted, when I'm watching the trial, I'm not watching with 100% focus and attention like the jury is. I'm actually watching kind of in the background as I work during the day. So there is that. I am a little bit split attention, but I found the testimony dry and boring and without context of if I didn't know what happened in the first trial, I would be very lost as to why this guy's even talking about this. It's like giving hints and inklings of things to come, but then without context, you kind of don't really know what's what to pay attention to, what's important. So basically, how he explained how the iOS Apple phones work is that when you open a tab, when you open a browser, it makes a log in their database the um, that the browser tab has been open, and then if you continue to do searches, like let's say you open it at 7:13 p.m. Like I open a browser right now at 7:13 and then I'm still there browsing, going on multiple websites. It will log every single search, every single web page that I visited, but all of those are going to be timestamped 7:13 when I actually open the browser. So the guy explained that um, if you see a record like that, it just means that that window has remained kind of open and in focus. And the only time you get a new timestamp is when you like close down the application or maybe you switch over to a different browser tab and then you switch back. So he said that the circumstances when a new timestamp is generated is when that tab is first opened and created or when it's brought into focus. So I kind of don't believe what the prosecution is contending, which is that from 2:30 some odd AM until 6 AM, that browser that she had open was in focus that whole time, that she never closed down, that app, and because that's essentially what she's saying is that, oh, she did the search at 6 AM, but it was in a browser tab that had already been opened and was open at 2 something. It just seems not likely, I suppose. That could happen, but didn't she turn her phone off at some point, or didn't her phone go to sleep at some point? Didn't she go to sleep? This is in the wee hours of the morning. So at some point, that browser tab would have lost focus, meaning the active thing that you are, looking at, interacting with, and then she would have had to give that tab focus, regain its focus, like, make it the primary app that you're working with, and once it, gets regains focus is when a new timestamp is generated. So if she had conducted that search at 6 AM, like, she had to bring it into focus again at 6 AM, which would have logged a 6 AM timestamp for that search, but that's not how the log reads. The log reads that search as happening at 2 something. So, all very interesting. Seems very early for this testimony to happen. The person on the defense side who did the cross examination was um, Alessi. He's a fabulous lawyer. I think he's very on top of things. He's a very smart guy. He seems to be their like technical guy. I think he understands like all the maths, all the sciences, and stuff like that. So he was really picking apart a lot of what this expert was putting forward. And one of the things, this is a pattern that I'm seeing as a what I believe, and I'm not a lawyer, but what I believe to be the defense strategy is that I think the defense is gonna try to make everybody on the all the witnesses that the prosecution calls, I think they're trying to discredit all of them by whatever means, makes sense. So if they've had prior testimony that now contradicts, they're going to be sure to bring that up. And one of the ways that they discredited this expert witness is that um, Alessi was pointing to facts that conveniently are facts in favor of Karen's, claim, I guess, as to or the defense claim as to who conducted the search and when, um, they they were just left out of his report. So all of the facts that were good for the prosecution were kept in, and conveniently, some of the facts that were good for Karen Reed were left out. And I kind of feel like experts are supposed to be neutral. They're just supposed to be there to try to get to the truth of the matter and to try to help the jury get to the truth of the matter. They're not supposed to be there as an advocate for one side or another. And of course, there's going to be some expert witnesses that are more favorable to your side, and that's why you're going to call them, and that's why you're going to make them a part of your case. But they should be like holistic in their accounting of the what they're there to testify to. So I just felt like, Alessi wasn't overly aggressive with him, and I think he did a good um, cross examination. Yeah, there is that, Susan. Unless they're getting paid enough by one side. Well, so that's just the thing, though. So that is something that comes up quite often by the prosecution because a lot of times one of the things that colors an expert's testimony is the fact that somebody paid them to be there, paid them to do the work that they did to write whatever reports and do whatever analysis that they did. Um, and that goes on both sides. But I feel like for somebody to if you are a professional in your field, I feel like you should conduct yourself and because somebody's life is on the line or somebody's freedom is on the line or somebody's money is on the line in a civil case, and it's not for you to be the arbiter of, you know, who should win, but you should just be talking about the facts and, you should kind of, um, lay it out there in whole, like so I don't think he was caught in any lies, this, Ian Whiffen, he was not caught in any lies at all. It was just that he was not being holistic about what was happening, and I don't fault him for that because he's not really supposed to answer anything or he's not supposed to talk about anything that he's not asked. So if the prosecution doesn't ask it, then, then I guess it's, within his right to just not mention it. But he didn't even have it in his report is the thing too. So, the prosecution was not able to ask him about it if he conveniently left it out of his report. So, so he was basically the only witness for the morning, and then I was watching the footage, a commentary from another channel that said a juror, so somebody sitting on the jury, was actually questioned by the judge at sidebar. And so don't know what jury drama there's gonna be, but there might be some drama with the jury, and we're early, we're day 5 of this trial, so not too sure if that's going to result in a juror getting dismissed, but I guess we're gonna find that out tomorrow. Now, the really hot topic I feel for today, and he's kind of in the thumbnail and in the, what you're looking at if you're watching on YouTube. So it's the voir dire of Dr. Wolf and Dr. Rentschler of ARCA. And so the thing with ARCA is this company, ARCA, was a company hired by the FBI in the federal case that was happening in parallel with the Karen Reed trial the first time around. So they were hired as um, accident reconstructionists, biomechanical experts to understand what might have transpired that would have inflicted the injuries that John O'Keefe suffered. And they, in the process of the federal trial, they generated a report of what they felt happened, what was possible. Was he hit by a car or was he not hit by a car? And so they conducted tests, they did some experiments, and, you know, they ultimately wrote up a report for, the federal prosecutors who were investigating. Well, we don't even really know what the federal investigation was about. Ultimately, it was, concluded without any charges being brought against Michael Proctor, um, but they did generate a report that they handed over to lawyers on both side of the Karen Reed trial the first time around. When the defense attorneys read this report, they found it to be highly favorable to Karen Reed because their report essentially says that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. And the things that um the prosecution was alleging in terms of how his injuries were sustained were not biomechanically, physically feasible. So, um, so the that's why ARCA is so important. Hi, Edith. Welcome. I'm watching the trial too. Check back to this channel for follow-ups. Oh, cool. Yeah, I've been doing daily recaps. This is the first one I did live. Let me know if you like the live recaps or you like the pre-recorded recaps. But since we just finished streaming Killer Cards episode 4 and I'm here already, I just figured I'll just go live. um, So here's how ARCA is coming into play in the retrial. So we have a new prosecutor now, and Hank Brennan, and he is fighting tooth and nail to exclude ARCA from testifying. Well, either period, even though he claims that's not his goal, or to limit what they can testify to. The other thing the thing that's different this time around is that the federal investigation has now concluded. So in the first trial, neither the defense nor the prosecution were allowed to really engage ARCA or talk to them about or hire them, to do any additional analysis or anything. ARCA was only allowed to turn over their final report, and they sent it to both sides. It just so happened that the defense found it useful, and so the defense subpoenaed them, called them to testify, um, and they came for a voir dire also in that first trial. Now, what's different is that the federal investigation has now concluded, so now ARCA is free to be hired by whomever would like to hire them. And of course, the defense finds that ARCA's findings are favorable to Karen Reed. And so they want to hire ARCA, or they have hired ARCA now, especially since the prosecution now has hired a different accident reconstructionist to explain how, their theory of the case. And it's really interesting that oh, cool. Susan, you were crafting with napkins. Yay. I'm guessing that's from the swap. Um Eva says, I just found you, but I can catch on live if, like, I like that for sure. Okay, cool, sweet. Um awesome. And so ARCA this time around can be hired by anybody who so wishes to hire them, and it so happens that the defense wants to hire them, especially because the prosecution actually has a new expert that they want to put on to explain how John sustained these injuries from a car accident, because the prosecution is still claiming that Karen Reed backed into him and he fell, hit his head and whatnot, and that's how the injuries to his arm were and head were inflicted. So to rebut that new expert's report and whatnot, the defense wants to hire ARCA. So now today was all about it was a voir dire of these two doctors. I think they're more like physics, they have PhDs, um, who are were hired to essentially look over the prosecution's expert and to essentially see if there's anything valid about it and um what their alternative theory is in terms of what happened to John. And so they are kind of using very nitpicky things, like you have deadlines on both sides, the defense and the prosecution, for submitting whatever evidence you plan to put on in your case. And that's only fair so that the other side knows what's coming and that they can prepare and have adequate time to prepare. And the prosecution keeps saying that, oh, you've brought these folks on late. This is like, how am I supposed to prepare for my case if you're only just now telling me that these guys are going to be testifying? I need to be able to know what they're going to testify to. And they're also um, kind of disputing the ARCA's involvement the first time around, because they're trying to catch the defense in a lie to say that um, because the defense claimed that they didn't pay ARCA, they only paid for they didn't pay them to do the work of the report, but they paid them to transportation to come to testify at the trial. And so it's just a lot of really, I think, gamesmanship, kind of legal gamesmanship to try to exclude Arca. And Judge Cannoni, I think, is very personal opinion, I think she's fairly biased towards the prosecution. And it was really like you could see when she's talking to the prosecutor how much friendlier she is to him, how she doesn't like she just lets him get away with murder. um, so for example, one of the things that she really doesn't like, and I think, rightly so, is she doesn't like the lawyers adding like spicy commentary. Like if they make like snarky remarks in between their questioning and whatnot, she really doesn't like that. There's no place in her courtroom for stuff like that. And that's good. That's as it should be. Um, but when the defense is being snarky, she's like, "We really don't need that." And she's like very she like chides them and admonishes them. And when the prosecution does it today, for example, she just says, "Please rephrase." And she's all like please and thank yous with the prosecution, whereas when she's telling the defense to knock it off, she basically says, "Knock it off." She's short of just saying it outright like that. Um, and also when she tells the defense to cut it out, they actually stop. They might try to sneak 1 or 2 more snide remark in, but then they knock it off, right? Whereas today, Brennan, time and time again, with the snide remarks, with the snarky remarks, with the extra commentary, over and over again, and he was not ever not a harsh word to him by the judge. It was just, um, "Please rephrase." Maybe the worst that she said to him was, "That's not necessary." Um, it was really, um, like, it could not be more obvious, and I think at one point, she did admonish, Hank Brennan, the prosecutor, but she did it at sidebar. She called the the lawyers up, and then all of a sudden, he was cut off because he just kept railing, and he kept going on and on, and after that sidebar, he was allowed to ask, like, 1 or 2 more questions, and then he had to let Dr. Wolf, go, and then no, actually, he didn't even get extra questions. I think she called them up to sidebar, they got done talking about whatever they were done talking about, and then she dismissed Dr. Wolf, and had Dr. Rentschler come onto the stand, and she told, Hank Brennan, "Keep it short." I think she said, "The prosecution's gonna ask you some very quick questions." And so when she does if she did, my speculation is that she might have admonished, Hank Brennan at that point, but she did it at sidebar where in her courtroom, all the sidebars are sealed. So we don't know what happens, and I think you have to file certain things to unseal it. Um, but she has no problem with admonishing defense counsel for, the world to see, the public watching. This is not happening in front of the jury, for sure. So the jury is not seeing any of this, but, we, the public, can see it, and it's just amazing. Ray says, "I've seen a judge just like that several years ago." "Oh, have you?" Yeah, it's so sad. I mean, it should not be that way, but I'm sure it's more common than we might think. So, so that was basically the end of day 5. I don't know if there were any rulings or conclusions from, the voir dire and if the judge will allow them to testify. I mean, she seems very hot and bothered about what kind of seems like a nothing burger, but she feels like the defense attorneys lied to her about, having handed over all of the information, whether or not that happened. And she was upset that text messages from like years ago were not preserved. Like, who preserves text messages? So yeah, it's just wild. Susan says, I wonder what, yeah, I know. I wonder that too. What were they, because it wrapped up real fast at the end. Like I think she wanted to make sure that both gentlemen from ARCA were asked questions of because they had to fly in. They're from Pennsylvania, and this is happening in New Hampshire, or no, it's happening in Massachusetts. And so I think out of courtesy to them and not having this like, you know what I mean, like go over to another day, she wanted to make sure it wrapped up. So if she didn't admonish him, she probably at the very least said, "We gotta get this done today. So you got whatever time left today to get both, get your questioning in on both guys." Um, Edith asks, "Did you watch the first trial? This is the first time I'm hearing all of the evidence." Oh, okay. So Edith, yes, I did watch the first trial, and so you've been watching the trials so far. Can you give me your thoughts on this morning? I don't know if you watched this morning's testimony from Ian Whiffen. Did that make sense to you? Because if you didn't watch the first trial, I'm just wondering, does his testimony make sense as to like what he's talking about and why it's important? Um, because a lot of what he's talking about was hotly kind of debated in the first trial. And yeah, the cell phone data. Yep. He was talking about, how, uh, cell phones log searches and the timestamp, and, they talked a little bit also about the, location data that phones have and whether you can tell if, a phone has, like changed in elevation essentially to indicate whether like you can walk up and down stairs. It can also have temperature data as well, like the battery temperature and all sorts. So did did his testimony like did the context of it make sense of why it matters everything he's talking about? It made sense to me because he is able to duplicate the data information on his own phone. Um, yeah, I mean, I think he was able to show like that is well. So the thing is that they put up a PowerPoint presentation. So I don't know how much of that was formatted for the PowerPoint presentation to be readable versus how much. Because one curious thing is that his all of the stuff that he was talking about that was in the PowerPoint was in reference to iOS 14, so version 14 of the Apple operating system, but what was actually on Jen McCabe's phone was iOS 15. So he did say that much of the same features and functionality are the same between 14 and 15, but he said that it would be much easier to understand if he presented it the way iOS 14 records it, which I kind of feel like, isn't that aren't you already starting off with the wrong premise? You're not using the same iOS version. So, you know, there's that. Susan says, "I wonder how accurate that all is. What happens if they don't have signal?" Yeah, I I think that's another thing that's getting debated a lot, and as cell phone data gets used more and more in these criminal trials, um, that exact your exact point, Susan, is what's coming up a lot because the fact that the data, how reliable is it really? How accurate is it really? Because we all, um, or maybe I won't say we all, but it is quite possible that you have a device, your cell phone, a Fitbit, or whatever, and it can be logging things that aren't really happening. So I could just be moving my phone back and forth a lot and not actually taking any real steps, but it could think that I'm taking steps just because it registers some movement, but it can't really tell precisely what is actually happening. And with regards to the location, the I don't know how good, the geo-tagging and all of that is, and that's the other scary thing, but I think that's also something, that can be turned off, right? Ray might know, because, I think on an Android, I think you can turn off or maybe on most phones, I think you can turn off the location tracking and stuff. So yeah, and it's stuff that, while we have this, like, rich data, the question is always gonna be, like, how reliable is it? And this is the sort of stuff that is, kind of like, DNA in a sense that has been used, and was, like, a huge thing in, like, criminal justice and bringing people to trial. People have been, um now that there's DNA data and analysis and the science behind it, a lot of people are getting exonerated because of DNA data, and how critical it's become in sort of the criminal justice system as it pertains to, like, trials and convicting people or having enough evidence to convict people. And I think cell phone data, it's like kind of in the beginnings of that, right? Where it's starting to get used a lot now in trials, it seems like. And I feel like maybe at some point it is going to get, like, a lot more accurate, to your point, Susan, that, whether we're there yet, I don't know, but I think at some point maybe we will get there and it's going to really be able to lock us into a, a specific, place and time. Yeah, yeah, exactly, like that joke about putting the Fitbit on a dog's tail and getting more steps in. Yep. Um Yep, okay, so yeah, thanks, Ray. I figured you would know. Yes, you can turn off GPS. Yep. You can even turn off 5G. Yeah, I mean, our phones are, they're listening all the time and they are especially because you can have all your voice activated devices in your house too. Those are always listening. Um so it is kind of crazy the amount of how much of our lives, I guess, is being recorded, and we don't know. And we would hope that nobody's actually looking at it, but if you commit a crime or if you're accused of committing a crime, there's all of this data now for better or worse. And so today was a lot about, at least with Ian Whiffin's testimony, it was a lot about the cell phone data. And it made sense to me why he's testifying and what all he's talking about, because I know the points of contention from the first trial being, when was that search made? How long to die in cold? Was it before or after the body was discovered? Because, that matters. And where was Jen McCabe when she made that search? Um, was she outside the home of, where John was found when she made that search? or was she at her home? Because this was not her home. She was found at Brian Albert and her sister's home, which was where John's body was found. And so, where does her phone say she was when she conducted that search? So, so it's kind of interesting. So I think tomorrow is going to be a full day. So, so it'll be interesting. I don't know who's on the witness list for tomorrow, but kind of interesting to see how this all unfolds. And so I'll be back again with another recap for day 6. If I can, I'll try to do it live. It's kind of fun to pop on live and have a little chat with folks who might be watching or who are just interested. So thanks for popping in, folks who found me live today. I know lots of people are covering this trial, so thanks for popping into my live stream and keeping me company. And I know it's late for some of you, so good night, folks. And I'll be back tomorrow either with like a pre-recorded trial recap, or if I can, I'll try to do it live. But until tomorrow, have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.